Welcome to Understanding Senior Housing in Southwest Florida. I'm Felicia Saracena, Director of Business Development here at the Arlington. And today on Live with a Purpose is Bruce Rosenblatt. And he is very well known in this area for senior living housing options. And so I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, thanks, Felicia, and thanks for the Arlington for allowing me to be part of this webinar. It's great to have everybody here, and hopefully the information I'm going to share will be relevant to everybody, and I think people will walk away with some very valuable information. So again, I'm Bruce Rosenblatt. I am the owner of Senior Housing Solutions, and I have been in the business for over 30 years. I have overseen 75 different senior living communities in 14 different states, and I formed my company in 2008. And that's all that I do is provide advice for people thinking about senior housing and helping people through that decision process. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to pull up, and we're going to start the slideshow here. So can everybody see this? Felicia, can everybody see that?
Sorry, muted myself. Not yet. I gave you an option. Your co-host, you should be able to share.
All right, hold on one second. Good old technology here.
Some days it's right on, and other days it just gives you a workout.
Share screen, okay. Okay, so as I said, I've been in the business for over 30 years. I've held executive positions for some of the leading senior living companies around the country. I've overseen a lot of different communities, including 3 in this area. My company actually this month is going to celebrate our 12th year anniversary of providing advice for people in senior housing. So I'm familiar with all the different options in both Collier and Lee counties. I'm very active in the local community. I think, Nancy, you said that I was scheduled to speak at your group, which is, hopefully I'll be able to do that in the future. So I look forward to that, but I try to be very active in the local community and try to support a lot of senior organizations. I am a native Floridian. You can't tell because of this webinar, but I'm actually 6'7", and I'm very tall, but we're grown tall in Florida, but I'm a native Floridian. I've lived in Southwest Florida actually going on 28 years. I'm a very active tennis player. I'm a scuba diver. I'm a barbecue judge, totally unrelated to everything. And I'm 6'7". So I get asked this question a lot. When is the right time to consider a senior living community? When should I start thinking about it? And so I have a saying that that I think it's probably going to go on my gravestone, but I'm going to probably patent the saying. But I say it's better to be 5 years too early rather than 5 minutes too late. And so many times people wait for a crisis to occur. They wait for something medically to happen, and then they say, okay, I'm ready to do something. And that's really not the best way to go. You want to be proactive. You want to be, doing your research. These communities in this area offer so much, and you want to move to these communities when you're able, when you're active, when you're independent, and not when you're in a medical crisis. Many of these communities have medical acceptance criteria that you're going to have to pass. And so if you wait for your health to change, you pretty much have waited too long. So we'll talk more about being 5 years too early rather than 5 minutes too late. But if you remember one thing from today's presentation, it's that you really want to do this earlier rather than later. It's really interesting because I've been doing this for so many years, and as I talk to people and talk to the people I've helped with this decision, everyone will tell me, Bruce, best decision I ever made. I only wish I would have made it sooner. And the reason why they're saying that is now they can get on with their life. They have the peace of mind of knowing that they are, their health care is taken care of, and they don't have to worry about maintenance and, running to Publix all the time. So, it is something to think about, that you want to do this before you actually need to do it. And again, you want to be proactive rather than reactive. especially in a decision like this. You don't want your kids making the decision for you. You don't want to, you want to be proactive. You want to be the person in charge. And people always tell me, Bruce, when I reach a certain age, that's the time I'm going to do it. And you just don't wake up one morning and say, okay, now is the time to move. It truly takes a plan. Moving is not easy, and so it takes a methodical plan to organize everything. I think people probably have the hardest time with this because they look at their life today, and people have a hard time trying to imagine what their life is going to be like a year from now, 5 years from now, and that's really what you need to be thinking about, because you're not really doing this for today. You're actually doing something to plan for your future, and so you thinking that nothing's ever going to change, and that what happens if you no longer drive? What happens if your health starts to change? What happens if your spouse's health starts to change or your health starts to change? How will that impact either your spouse or your family? And so these are, that's a very important thing to start thinking about, is that, kind of think about your life in this crystal ball, and what will my life be like down the road? And so everybody loves everything right now the way that it is, but that's not gonna be the way for the future. And it truly takes a plan. So, I hear this, we live in a beautiful area down here in Southwest Florida. It's a great life down here. And people always tell me, Bruce, I enjoy where I live. I don't want to move. I have great neighbors. I have a great view. I don't want to move where I'm living. And I don't want to move from where I am. And so the question to ask yourself is, how will your life change, if it's not a when you or your spouse starts needing care? So that's a very, very big question to start asking yourself, is how will your life change, when you start needing care? And what happens is that, the burden then is placed on your spouse and your family. So, we see it a lot, in this industry about, caregivers wearing themselves down. And, it's really tragic, because a lot of times the person who needs care doesn't realize the impact that they're having on their spouse. I have a couple right now. They live in a nice condo, and the husband, is kind of up in age, and he needs care. And the wife is just killing herself, literally helping him out. And they've looked at a couple places, but he is just stubborn. He doesn't want to move anywhere. And the sad thing is that it's wearing on her. They don't have children, and so everything is on her shoulders. And you can just tell, and when we speak all the time, and she's pretty much in tears as we talk, because it just, it's wiping her out. And he doesn't realize what he's doing. And so these are the things you need to start thinking about. And as I said, the caregiver is usually the one that ends up requiring care. And so the question is, people say, I want to live in my home. I don't want to move anywhere. So the question you should ask yourself is, can you sustain yourself in your home as you get older? Is this really a realistic option for you? Can you sustain yourself? What happens if you no longer drive? What happens if you, are, not cooking right, or not eating right? Or what happens if you start needing care in your home? So these are, it's a very big question to ask yourself, but this is what you need to start thinking about. So, I meet with a lot of people, and I hear a lot of different things. And I had this one client, and they lived in a beautiful home, and she had this big dining room table. And everywhere we went, she wanted to bring this table. And the table didn't fit. It was a huge table, to a point where one night I wanted to kind of get in there and get my little saw out and chop this table in half, because it was holding her back from making this decision. And so she fell, and she was on the ground for hours, and no one knew she fell. No one could help her. And so yes, there is that dining room table, but that dining room table doesn't provide an ounce of care for you. So, your paradigm has to shift, because people say, oh, I look out and I see the sunsets every night and there's dolphins out there jumping, or I have this beautiful china cabinet and I can't part with it. And, it's just a table, it's just a china cabinet. And so things, your priorities have to shift. If you stay in your home and you wait for your health to change to force you into a decision, you're not going to be in any condition to move. Moving is hard. Moving takes energy. You want to move so you can meet your friends and get settled in. And if you wait, as I said, if you're 5 minutes too late versus 5 years too early, you're in no condition to do anything, and your options are going to be limited. Again, many of these places have medical criteria that you're going to have to pass. And if you wait for your health to change, you may not get accepted. And it's very tragic, because people tell me all the time, Bruce, I want to move to this place. All my friends live there. They're having a great time. I just wasn't ready to do anything. And, and then that senior community looks at someone's medical and they say, no, you represent too much of a risk. We don't want you. So it happens all the time. So, we talk about, people always tell me, Bruce, I'm never going to need care. I'm just going to, not wake up one morning. And, it's just, that is not realistic. And so, when I hear this, I'm never going to need care. And I joke, but it's true that denial is not that river that runs in Egypt. It's the reality that the majority of people are going to need care. All these places are filled with people that never thought they would ever need to go there. And so, it's not realistic to think that, you're just not going to wake up one morning. It's the fact that majority of people are going to need care. According to Business Week, 65% of people over 75 will need long-term care. I love this one. I'm just going to take my chances. I'm just going to roll the dice. I'm just going to take my chances. 7 out of 10 couples will see one partner go into skilled nursing care. So that's 70%. 70% of people admitted into skilled nursing will spend down all their assets within the first 3 months. That's in the Wall Street Journal. We're going to take care of one another. It's all about denial. So denial comes in a lot of different shapes and forms, but we're going to take care of one another. How many times have we all heard that? And what does that look like? So women, and I see there's a majority of women on this call today, you all live 5 to 10 years longer than us men. And so, as men, we have to recognize that, and we have to recognize that our wives are probably going to outlive us. And so we need to make sure that they're taken care of. As wives and as women, you have to recognize that there's going to be a point where you're going to live longer than your husband or your spouse. And so, you're going to need to take charge of things. And, you need to have a plan in place, because, just like I said with that couple that I'm working with, well, that woman, that client of mine does not have, she's going to outlive her husband, but, God forbid something happens to him, and then she's going to be all alone, and she's going to be stuck with the house. She's going to be stuck dealing with all of that, the whole move and everything. It's just too hard. So, this is realistic. And so, how much burden is this place on a healthy spouse? So if you say we're going to take care of one another, is that truly the right answer? And so again, it's when something happens to one person, what will the other person do? What will the life be like? And so, again, these are things you need to start thinking about. A lot of times in a couple situation, there's a lot of times where the husband might have taken care of all the household affairs, getting things repaired around the house and paying the bills and everything. Then all of a sudden he passes away, and the wife has no clue, that the wife doesn't, hasn't managed the checkbook and hasn't paid the bills, or doesn't know where, who to call if the air conditioning breaks. So, these are things as you are living in your current home that you need to start thinking about, who is going to manage all those things. on the other side, there are times where the wife predeceases the husband. And I had a situation the other day where the wife was the social person. The wife was, handled the whole social calendar and got everything together. And she was the person. And then she passed away and the husband was all by himself. And the husband, didn't shower. He didn't, his personal care suffered. And basically he kind of lost his filter. And so whatever was in his mind, he would just say it. And it was really off color and it was, not appropriate things to say, but he totally lost his filter. And so, these are the things you have to start thinking about when people say, oh, we're going to take care of one another. We're going to watch out for one another. Well, things aren't perfect and people don't live and die at the same time. And, usually one person's going to outlive the other. And so, again, you got to start thinking about what will your life be like. So I'm sure Felicia could appreciate this, but, in this business, we get a lot of people who, get bogged down with this whole decision. They gather brochures from all these different places and they have this big file cabinet of all the different options. And they, before the COVID and everything, they were, going to luncheons and going to all this. And what happens is you become paralyzed because you have all this information and you have all this, you can't separate all this information. So you become paralyzed, and I call it analysis paralysis, and which is extremely stressful. And so, this is one of the things that I help people with is that, we got to kind of sort through, which place fits your needs the best, which place, has a good reputation and is doing the best job, and move on. And it's really interesting because people, after they make a decision, I'll call them, say, the next day, and it's like, well, how did you sleep last night? And people will say, Bruce, the best night I've slept in months. And it's because that whole burden, that whole stress is lifted off your shoulders. So I know people always struggle with this, is staying in your home the right answer? And so, everybody starts thinking about, well, I don't want to move anywhere. It's a hassle to move. I'm just going to stay in my home. I'm just going to hire some help. And so I wanted to kind of talk about what that really looks like. So I have a little story to share, and again, I've never tried this at home. I'm not some weird person. So, and don't you try it at home. But, the story goes that if you take a frog and you put a frog in boiling water, the frog will immediately jump out. The water is too hot, the frog will jump out. But if you put a frog in lukewarm water and you gradually turn up the temperature on the range, the frog will cook himself to death. The frog doesn't realize that the water around him is getting too hot. And that's what happens when people stay in their homes too long. They don't realize that the water around them is getting too warm or getting too hot until it's too late. And so, I see it a lot. I'm sure Felicia sees it as well, that, people are so close to it, so close to their situation that they don't realize that things are getting a little warm. And so, again, you don't want to wait for, this to occur. You want to be proactive. So my question is your water lukewarm or starting to boil? So I'm just going to bring in help. So what does that look like? So, I say it's a short-term solution for a long-term problem. And so, it's great for somebody who has, rehab, they had knee surgery or hip surgery and they just need care for a short period of time. But long-term, it presents major issues. You become very isolated in your home. And so you're not getting out, you're not socializing. And so you're at home, you have to manage all these, the people coming into your house. And it's very expensive, and we'll talk about numbers in a second, but it's hard to manage. There's a limited number of home care people in this area, and they have multiple jobs. And so, they could be working with you, they could be working with somebody else, or they have their families at home and they have a kid that gets sick or they have a flat tire. And so, you're counting on that person to show up, and all of a sudden they don't. Or maybe you don't like that person, or maybe that person gets another job. And so these are things, you're going to have to deal with. And all of a sudden you're now managing people. And, and you may not be in the, obviously you've had to hire help for a reason. And so now you are managing people on top of dealing with everything medically. It's very stressful. There are some good companies in town, but it's very hard to find reliable and trustworthy and qualified help. Very difficult. You can have different shifts, different aides, so you're not going to get that same person, during the day and on the evenings and the weekends. Totally different person. And and you really have nothing in common with these people. So these are not highly educated people that are grew up in your same hometown, that are traveled, so you have nothing in common, and they're in your space. And typically, in this area, you have a minimum of 3 to 4 hours. So you have somebody in your space for a minimum of, say, 3 to 4 hours that you have nothing in common with. And so it becomes very awkward. So when you start thinking about the cost of home care, and this is in today's dollars, just so you know, this is the 2020 dollars. So if you hired somebody right now and it's 4-hour minimum and it's $25 an hour, and this is a base level individual, so a base level aide. And so you're looking at about $100 a day. So let's just say it's 7 days a week. That's $700 a week times a month. That's $2,800 a month. So that's bare minimum for home health care. On top of that, if you needed a nurse or someone had to work on a holiday or weekends, you're going to pay, it could be up to $50 an hour. On top of all that, you still have to pay for your house. You still got to pay, you still have your food, your housekeeping, your utilities, your HOA, all those things, your maintenance on your house, all those things on top of your home care. So, it's very important to kind of start thinking about, when you start comparing the dollars of living in a senior living community compared to staying in your home, this could get very expensive very quickly. So I've been in this business for quite a while, and I support senior living communities. And so what are some of the advantages of that? And the big one is peace of mind for the future. Knowing that you can live your life, you don't have to worry about your health care, you don't have to worry about being burned to your family, you don't have to, you know where your care is coming from, and it's there. This maintenance-free lifestyle, that's huge. I have a house, I maintain my house, there's always something breaking, and trying to get repairmen, trying to get things taken care of. I have an elderly mom, and unfortunately, these companies come in there, and I believe they take advantage of it. They'll come in there and say, your air conditioning needs to be repaired, or your refrigerator needs to be fixed. And all of a sudden, it's a charge here and charge there. So being able to live in a senior living community, make one phone call and have something fixed, and not have to worry about getting it paid for, not worrying about tipping, not worrying about finding the right person. This is huge. We are going, I guess yesterday was the start of hurricane season, and to think that even after a hurricane, that if there was some damage to a roof or to your place, if you lived in a senior living community, you would not have to worry about it. It's all taken care of. I know with my house, I had to get a new roof, and we had landscaping issues, and so this whole maintenance free is such a perk. These communities have great services, on-site services, amenities. This on-site healthcare is huge, knowing that there's always somebody available, knowing that there's a doctor or there's a nurse available. Tonight, my wife and I, we're going to have chicken tonight. And I cook all the meals. My wife doesn't have a choice. She doesn't have a menu every night. But if you live in that senior living community, every night you have a menu, and you can choose if you want chicken, you want salmon, you want an omelet, you can have a steak. And so what a great luxury that is, to know that there's a chef that is preparing wonderful meals for you. And it's not only just nutritionally, but socially is so important. You know, the communities now have, you know, on-site exercise classes, 24-hour emergency response. And I think people, you know, one of the reasons I think people hold off in making a decision, I think people think that they're going to lose their independence. But actually, people gain independence. When you don't have to worry about your maintenance, and you don't have to worry about going to the store, and you don't have to worry about pretty much anything, you know, you can be more independent. You could, you know, you can be with your family, you can travel, you can do all those things so you can be independent longer. And there's a tremendous amount of freedom. And, you know, these communities, there's a lot of fun. You know, there's happy hours, there's parties, there's dances, you know, there's just so much going on. So these communities, you know, it's great that everybody has a lot of fun. You know, and people don't, we probably don't talk about it, but, you know, knowing that you are living in a community where there are like-minded people, where you have lifelong friendships with people, that you really don't have to ever be alone unless you want to be alone. You know, that's really important, because as you know, if it's a couple and someone loses a spouse, you know, it's very hard to be that third wheel. And knowing that there's always friends around, knowing that there's always that support group, I think it's a big thing for people. So as we think about the senior living communities in this area, I'll break these down, and it's kind of a very easy way to understand this. So there are three basic types of senior living communities in this area. There's rental, there's condominium, and there's the buy-in, or what we call CCRC. And I'm going to talk about each one of these separately. So the rental communities, you're going to start off paying a non-refundable community fee. And I'll do numbers in a second. So you're going to pay a community fee, you're going to pay your rent. So typically you're going to sign an annual lease, and you're going to pay your rent on a monthly basis. If you move out or if you pass away, your lease terminates. So some people like the flexibility of a rental, knowing that you're not obligated long term. As you need care, you're going to pay for higher levels of care as you need it. The condominium is pretty much like what you have now. Title is in your name. So this is a pure real estate transaction. So title is in your name. And there's pros and cons of real estate. Some people like knowing that they have equity and they have something that's going to appreciate, but some people don't want the hassle of real estate. And, you know, we hope things are going to appreciate, but it may not. So, you know, it's something to think about as you're looking at a real estate investment. In addition to purchasing your unit, you're going to be paying an ongoing monthly charge. There could be assessments. People also are attracted to the condominium because there's no medical criteria to move in. So if someone has a pre-existing condition, they cannot exclude you from living there. As you need care, you're going to pay for care as you need it. So CCRC, when I started in this business 30 years ago, and I thought, what is this acronym, CCRC? And I thought that stood for Country Club Retirement Community. And, and in this area, that's really what they are. The Arlington and other communities, these are country club retirement communities. But really the CCRC stands for Continuing Care Retirement Community. It's a special type of community. And so you'll see it called a CCRC. But that's what it stands for, Continuing Care Retirement Community. You also see that these communities are being called life plan communities. Same thing, just a different term. So, they're trying to change the terminology because people felt that continuing care was more healthcare related and life plan was more of a, similar to what is offered at these different communities. So you'll see these two things, CCRC or life plan, but basically the same thing. So the deal with the CCRC is that it's a contractual obligation to provide care, services, and housing over your lifetime. So just as at the Arlington, you're going to sign a contract that is guaranteeing you care and services and housing over your lifetime, which is huge. You're going to pay an upfront entrance fee. You're going to pay a monthly charge. And again, we talked about this, but there's going to be a medical and a financial criteria to move in. So, again, it's better to be 5 years too early rather than 5 minutes too late. And this is where it gets people caught, because they say, I want to move to the Arlington. This is where I want to move to. And then the Arlington looks at your medical and they say, you represent too much of a risk for us. So it is something to think about. And in this area, there are for-profits and non-for-profits. I saw a number the other day. There are about 2,000 CCRCs across the country, and 80% of them are nonprofit. So kind of breaking down the healthcare options of these three different choices. So in the rental communities, you start off independent living. So just as you are now, you're independent, you come and go, it's your apartment, you furnish it. So it's independent living you start off with. And then you could progress to assisted living. So, the difference in assisted living is that you need some assistance with certain activities of daily living. And then you could go to memory care. So if you needed some more supportive memory environment, then you could progress to memory care. In a condominium, you start off independent living, and then they offer assisted living. And the CCRCs, you start off independent living, you could progress to assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory care. So all within the campus here. Financially, how they look is that in a rental communities, you're going to start off with a monthly fee, and in this area, the smallest and the least expensive in this area runs about $1,600, and then go up to probably about $6,000 a month. So that's sort of a range, and obviously it depends on the community itself. But it depends on if it's a couple or a single person. Depends if it's a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. So there's a lot of factors that impact that price. The condominiums, they start off about $250,000. They go up to about $1 million, and your monthly charge in a condo is about $2,500 a month. And the CCRCs, they start off about $350,000, and they go up to about $2.5 million. And your monthly fee starts off about $3,000 a month and goes up to about $9,000 a month. So quite the spread in this area from the different types of communities. Again, it depends on the community, it depends how many people are living there. And in the CCRCs, it also depends on your refund program. So, the communities, 10 years ago, they offered a zero refund. So you'd pay your $350,000, and after a period of time, if you moved out or passed away, there would be a zero refund given back to you or back to your estate. So the communities kind of heard from the market, and the market said, hey, maybe we want to give something back to our family. So what they've done is that they charge a sort of an upcharge. So instead of paying $350,000, you might pay $500,000, but you might get 50% back, or you might pay $600,000 for the same apartment and either have a 70 or 80 or even a 90% refund. So it's the same apartment, it's just how you want it structured. And so some people like knowing that there's a refund, knowing that there's something back to their estate, or other people want to know that they want to come in at the lowest price. So it does get a little complicated. This is where I think I can provide a lot of insight and all that, but it is it is good to think about that there are these different options. So there are specialty communities, and so there are freestanding assisted living. And I know, like the Arlington right now, if you needed assisted living, someone could go, straight to assisted living and pretty much bypass independent living. So you could go straight into assisted living, and they start off at about $3,500 a month, go to about $7,000 a month. There's memory care communities, and they start at about $5,000 a month. And there are freestanding skilled nursing, if you can get in one, if it's a decent one, and they're about $7,000 to about $10,000 a month. So skilled nursing, very expensive. And so, if someone does wait too long and they don't get accepted in independent living, there are these different choices available for people. It's also important to recognize that these are base fees. So when I say 3,500, that could just be a base rent. And then if you need assistance with medications, or maybe you need help in the shower, or maybe you need help ambulating. So each one of those types of things, they could impact your base fee, and what they do is on levels of care. So you might be a level 1, level 2, level 3. So some communities have a base rent that includes all their care, and other communities will charge you a low rent, and then they will tack on the levels of care. So it gets very confusing, and it's kind of sort of complicated because you might think you're a level 1, and the community might think you're a level 3, and you're going to have to pay for that level 3 price. So a lot of people don't know what a senior housing advisor is. We have financial advisors and legal advisors and tax advisors, but what the heck is a senior housing advisor? And the way I look at it, this is a big decision. Moving anywhere, it's very complicated, and why not tap into a resource that knows everything about all the different communities? And it's too big of a decision to do it alone. And I know what you don't know. I've been in the business for a long time. I know the inner workings of all these different communities, and so I know what you don't know. And you want to go in there. I try to educate people on everything that they should know, from a contract to different services, again, to the levels of care. So there's no surprises. That's the last thing you want to do, is move into a community and be surprised. And I help you develop a plan for your future. Not all my people have their bags packed and are ready to move. And so I work with a lot of people who are, trying to plan ahead. They want to know when they're ready, where they want to move to. And so I help develop that plan for your future, so we could be proactive, which is the key thing to everything. You want, as an advisor, you want somebody who is very knowledgeable about all the different options in the area. I kind of surprise people, but there are about 100 different senior living communities in this area. So that's quite it's quite the variety, and I can't imagine anybody going to visit all 100 of them. Well, I have. I've stepped foot in all the different communities in this area. I want to help you narrow down your search. As I said, there's about 100 in this area, 32 in Collier and 58 in Lee. Somebody that you can trust. I've been in this business for a long time. So just a couple of parting thoughts here. Doing nothing is actually doing something. However, the end result may not be what you expected. Thinking nothing will change is not being realistic. And people don't plan to fail. They fail to have a plan. So with that, I'm going to open this up for some questions. So I see there's one here. No?
Okay, just unmuting everybody.
Any questions? Felicia, you want to add anything?
I think you did a fantastic job explaining it for everyone.
Yes, great job, Bruce.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just so everybody knows, I do webinars as well. I have one this Thursday on hurricane preparedness. So if you're interested in getting prepared for the hurricane, reach out to me. My phone number, if you need it, is 239-595-0207. So you can call me or text me. My website is seniorhousingsolutions.net. So you can check me out there.
And, having someone like Bruce coming in to help you makes things a lot easier for most of the part. And they help you just kind of compare and contrast, which is important as well. And we work really well together with your company. So we appreciate that.
We do, Felicia. The Arlington is I have a great relationship with the Arlington. I appreciate it and appreciate everybody that works there.
Wonderful.
Your food, I miss your food though. You got some great food there. Your chef is wonderful.
I know. We do. It's different getting the food in the dining room now that the dining room is open. the residents are really happy to be able to go to the dining room, because getting it to go is just not the same experience as going into the dining room and enjoying the service as well. So they are looking forward to that now too.
This is Nancy. I have a question. Bruce, what is involved in hiring you as an advisor?
What is involved?
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. You call me and you say, Bruce, I need your services. It's not, I don't have a contract. I don't have anything legal, it's just, and the most part, my services are free. And so, I get paid on the back end. So if you ever move into a community, they pay me a referral fee. And so my advice and my services normally is free.
Okay, we have already contacted and visited a number of communities, both buy-in and rental. Does that influence
Yes, it does.
anything that we do? Okay.
Yes, it does. And so in that case, I do charge a consulting fee.
Okay.
It's $2.50 an hour. And we can, set up a conference call and talk about all the different options. And you kind of want to tap into what I know about all the different ones. There may be places that you don't know about, or maybe there's something that, something new out there that, maybe you haven't researched, but for people who have already done their research and they want to tap into my knowledge, then they would just retain me on a consulting basis.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great
Another question. What is the average age of people moving into any one of these types of communities?
So Nancy, that's a great question. So there's average ages of it's how can I say it? So there's the average age of people who are moving in, and there's the average age of people who have been living there. So there's sort of two different average ages. So there's the average. So the CCRCs typically will attract people who are younger. So people who are in their, I would say, mid to late 70s, early 80s. So
Okay.
that's really the CCRC, sort of the move-in age demographic. The rentals, because there's really not a medical, and because there's people wait a little bit longer in the rentals typically will attract people who are mid to upper 80s. And so and it does vary, as well as some of the a new community that is just coming out of the ground, that might attract younger people. Like a CCRC that's a new community might attract younger people. So it does vary from community to community. But typically you will find the younger people, more couples in a CCRC, and an older person more in a rental.
Okay, now another question. If both have long-term care insurance, how does that impact a decision?
You asked some really good questions. You're like a plant for this webinar.
No, I'm sorry, not a plant.
No, it's great.
Just curious.
So long-term care insurance. So normally, and again, I want to preface everything. I don't sell long-term care insurance, and I don't have your policies. I can't give you a specific answer. But if you're living in a CCRC, your first line of defense, if you're living in your apartment, would probably be to hire some care for you, so you could stay in your apartment before you move to assisted living, before you move into memory care. You would probably hire some help to come and help you out. And in that regard, your long-term care insurance, again, depending upon your policy, would probably start paying for that home care to help you, stay in your apartment longer. As you move to assisted living or memory care, then you could use your long-term care insurance to get reimbursed. And so if there was a charge for your assisted living or your nursing care or your memory care, you could file a claim through your long-term care insurance. Even if there wasn't, there are some continuing care communities where your monthly fee stays the same and there's not an increase. Even in that scenario, you can file a claim with your insurance because that senior living community will give you a breakdown of what the per diem charge would be. So, I would say, unless your premium is just totally outrageous, I would say you probably want to keep your long-term care insurance for as long as possible. If you move to a rental community and needed care, well, you would just activate your long-term care to help pay for your care. So it's a good thing to have.
Okay, another question. Sorry if I'm being monopolizing your time, but one of the things that I had heard in one continuing care community was that if one partner required significant assisted living, then both had to move to the assisted living facility. Or is it feasible that one can stay in the apartment for independent living and the other move to the assisted care?
So I have not heard that before. So I don't know of any community in this area that would force somebody who is independent to assisted living. And I'm a strong believer that people adapt to the environment in which where they live. And so, if you're independent and all of a sudden you move over to assisted living or memory care, well, you're going to become assisted. And, or conversely, if you're independent and you stay independent, you're going to be independent that much longer. So I don't know of any community that will say you must move over to the assisted living when you are independent. So, that's different though if you are, if you're saying to the community is, hey, we're a couple and I want to stay together with my spouse as long as possible and I'm okay to move, then, then that's your choice that you're making. But that's not the community forcing you into that decision. So, I would, maybe offline we should talk about, which community that is and we can look at their contract, but I don't know of any community that is that regimented to force somebody into that type of decision. Because it's just not healthy. It's not where you want to be. Not that the living is a bad environment. It's just if you're healthy and independent, you shouldn't be there.
But if one of the couple has to have significant support, and if you choose to stay independent and the other has to go to assisted living or memory care or skilled nursing, is that two separate fees? Your fee for your independent, and then you have the fee for the additional care.
So that is community specific.
Okay.
So, there are some communities where, you're going to pay your monthly fee and that will not change. If one person's getting one getting care and the other person's independent, it will not change. There are communities that will offer a discounted rate if one person needed care and the other person stayed independent. But that is community specific and not a general type of thing. And I was thinking about your first question. I had this gentleman who was living by himself in a continuing care community, and he decided on his own to move over to assisted living, and so he felt more safe being having more staff around, someone to make sure he doesn't fall in the shower. So he gave up his this is his choice. He gave up his independent living apartment, moved over to assisted living. He then met a lady friend out in the community within that continuing care community. He met a lady friend, and he didn't want to be in assisted living any longer. And so the community had to give him back his independent living apartment. So he went from assisted living back to independent living, started dating the woman, and they dated for a while, and then they broke up, and he moved back over to assisted living. So and there's never any money difference, and so you didn't have to pay for the other apartment or anything. You just moved back and forth and back and forth. So There's crazy stuff that happens, but
So that's in a CCR community?
yes, yes, it was
Mhm.
locally.
I have a question if Nancy is finished. Is Nancy finished?
Yeah, well, that's all right. I'll wait till you're done. I'll have one more that I'll ask later.
So shall I ask my question?
Please do.
Okay. I'd like to know, what do you mean by medical criteria? And what specifically is memory care? Is that referring to dementia and Alzheimer's, or is that something, I mean, is that a separate living category where people actually move to if they have dementia? It's a different type of apartment or living situation?
So there was two questions there, and
Yes.
I'll answer both of them. So the medical criteria varies from community to community. So when you are looking at a CCRC specifically, they're going to look at your medical history, and they're trying to determine a level of risk. What is the likelihood that you're going to move to this community and need care in the near future, or what is the likelihood that you're going to move into this community and be independent and enjoy all the amenities. No one can play God, so no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but they look at your history, they look at the medicines that you're on. They probably will do a one-on-one meeting with you or a phone interview with you these days. And so they're trying to determine this level of risk. And again, every community is different. So one community might be really strict, and they may have a waiting list, and another community might be a little bit more lenient because they're okay. So I can't say it's this way at the Arlington or it's that way, because it's just every community is different. But they're things that are progressive in nature are going to cause a red flag. And so when people, if someone has Alzheimer's or dementia or Parkinson's, these things are going to create a red flag. It doesn't mean you may not be accepted, but it's something that they're going to look very carefully at to see if they are willing to accept somebody who has a progressive type of situation. So when we talk about the different types of care, you have assisted living, and then you have memory care. And memory care is really set up in it's a more of a secured environment. It's specialized. So it could be someone who has dementia, could be someone who has Alzheimer's, Lewy body disease. So somebody who has, needs more mental type of stimulation. And I always think that, the difference between when I think about assisted living and memory care is that, if the fire alarm was going off, would that individual know to evacuate? Would that person know that there's an emergency going on? And, in an assisted living, if someone could be in assisted living, that person would know there's, the fire alarm's going off and something needs to happen. But if so that person doesn't know, what's happening, that person probably should be more in a more secured environment, which would be more memory care type of setting. So it's two separate types of components within within the healthcare system. Does that answer that question?
So, but to be more specific, at an advanced age, most people do have pre-existing conditions. How stringent are your criteria for allowing people into these communities? I have a pre-existing, my husband has pre-existing. We're healthy at the moment. Right now we're stable. So, but we have pre-existing, there's no question.
And it's a good point, because, you're dealing with an age group of people and everybody's got something going on.
Yeah.
It just depends on the severity of it. And it depends on the community. Like I said, like I gave you that example of the gentleman whose wife passed away and now he has no filter. Well, he got turned down. He got turned down because he wasn't socially accepted. And so there are communities they'll make you, they'll put you through a battery of tests. They'll make you count backwards from 100 using 7. They'll say, within a, within 20 seconds, if you go to the zoo, tell me all the animals you would see in a zoo. And so they're trying to determine, are you independent? Can you live independently? Or, are you going to move in and the next day need care? And again, every community is different. There are communities in town that are extremely strict, and they will make you sit up and stand up and stand up and sit down from a chair, walk from one side of the room to the other, and they're very strict. And then there are other communities that will meet with you, and they will see, hey, this is a lovely couple and they're doing just fine, and they would be an asset to our community, and they'll let you in. So it's not a one size fit all across the board.
And Bruce, if you will let me just, I know Joanna's touch base with Jeanette and with Brent here. I'm happy to have them touch base with you on what that criteria looks like and just give you a little bit of a better outline, if you would like, just because I know that, they do look for certain things, but then they also understand that everyone has some pre-existing conditions here too. And typically it's a certain time frame that they're looking for, maybe 2 or 4 years that you'll be able to stay independent, and then it's fine. So I'll definitely have them touch base with you if you would like.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It is a business, these communities, it is a business. And if they're so strict, they wouldn't be able to sell apartments. So, there is that line between, is it a good business decision? Is it or is it too much of a risk? But if you are so strict, you're going to have empty apartments, which is a problem. And on the flip side, if you are too lenient, your community isn't going to be independent. It's going to become more of a nursing home. So there's a balance. All right, Nancy, fire away at me.
Oh, I was just going to ask, what are you finding that people who are buying in, are they opting for some return, or are the majority opting for the lower buy-in with no return?
It's a really good question. You ask really good questions, and I find it's hard for me to answer because everybody's situation is different. My personal feeling is I would rather let my money work for me versus giving it to somebody else. So I would rather, if it was me, I would come in at the lower price. But there's a lot of variables. Your age is a huge variable. So I had a gentleman who was 90 years old looking at a community that offered I think it was an 80 or 90% refund. And in that scenario, it made a lot of sense for him to pay the higher amount because he would not be able to live there long enough to make his money work for him in order to get the 90% back. So it's different if you're 7 years old moving into a community, and if you're younger, I would say definitely you should be thinking about the 0 or coming at the lower price because your money is working for itself in the bank versus you're giving it to somebody else. But and I've had couples, and one they have a sort of a pact and says, okay, if something happens to me, I'm moving it back up to Michigan. Well, if that's the case, if that's the scenario, then I would say the higher refund plan is the way to go. But you do need to look at it. What's the cost difference between, say, the 0 refund and, say, the 50% plan? And so, let's just say it's $200,000 difference. And I'm just throwing that out. You have to say, so you're going to spend $200,000 today in order to have money given back to your estate when you're no longer here. And so you got to think about that. I would talk to your financial advisor and have him crunch some numbers. But but it varies, from person to person on which plan they select. But there are some communities that they only offer, one option. They don't offer a 0 and a 70 or a 90. But like I have another gentleman right now, and he sold his home, and he's looking at a place that offers a 90% refund. So, and he's not sure if he's going to like it or not. And so, that idea that he can move there and always walk away with 90%, well, that's pretty sweet. And that he can walk away with 90%, and he's 85 years old, and he's healthy, he's active, he's 85, but he's not sure if he's going to like it. So knowing that he could pay this 90% or pay the fee, and if he doesn't like it, he walks away with 90%. It's a pretty sweet deal. But it's every situation is different.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruce. I really do appreciate all of the answers and your whole presentation. I'm very happy I was able to see it because, as I said, we had to cancel your presentation for our Power Squadron group back in, must have been March or April.
Yeah, well, you'll have to get me back in there.
We certainly will do that.
Anything else? Joanna, you're good?
I'm good, thank you.
I love your draperies. Beautiful.
I know you can get those.
Well, thank you all for joining today. This was wonderful, Bruce. And thank you, ladies, for all your questions too. They're very, it's great to hear them and to get a feel for what everyone's thinking too. All right. Does anyone have any other questions?
Okay.
All right. And Bruce, how can they contact you after this event?
Well, you can call me, 239-595-0207. You can go to my website, which is www.seniorhousingsolutions.net. You can email me at bruce@seniorhousingsolutions.net. You can like me on Facebook. You can you can find me anywhere around town. You can't miss me. I'm 6'7".
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining everyone today. And if anyone wants any further information on the Arlington, you can always give us a call at 239-307-3000. You can find us on our website at arlingtonnaples.org. We also have an Arlington Naples Facebook page, and we will be posting this on YouTube. And we have a YouTube page so that you can refer back to it in case there's something you wanted to listen to, or if you want to share with a loved one or a friend. But
Thanks, Felicia.
thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You also. Bye-bye.
Bye.